New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here, and it's been a while since I've gotten an opportunity to hang out with you on the Saturday morning Science of Mind and Spirit morning conversations. And it is a conversation, I hope. So please say hello in the chat or in the comments section, depending on which platform you are participating. And I'd love to know who is out there and where you are from. Good morning, Wayne. So glad to see you. Haven't seen you here on Saturday in a while. And Linda, so good that you are here. And Shay, hey, Shay. Woo! This morning is really a special morning. And as that comes out of my mouth, I'm like, wait a minute. I believe every morning is a special morning. If I wake up, it's already a good day. And it's, my desire is that it's all uphill from there. Not uphill, but it's going upward from there. And most days that is true. But I am really glad to be with you this morning because I miss the Saturday morning Science of Mind conversations. And today is the last Saturday of the year. We just finished Hanukkah less than a week ago. The solstice happened within the last week. Christmas, of course, happened just a couple of days ago. And we are now on day 2 of Kwanzaa for those who participate in that ritual. And I know some of you are gearing up already for New Year's Eve and starting the new year. So there's a lot that we could talk about. I'm going to focus for just a minute on Kwanzaa, since we are actually in Kwanzaa right now. And the second day of Kwanzaa is Kujichagulia. The principle that is focused on is Kujichagulia, which is a mouthful to say for most of us. But what does it mean? The translation of Kujichagulia is self-determination. And I love being able to today make that connection between science of mind principles, because so much of what we teach is about self-determination, determining, choosing, setting your intentions, and choosing what kind of life experience you want to have. And so I'm accepting that there is no coincidence that I would be sharing with you on this last Saturday of the year. And this idea of self-determination does also require us to understand ourselves and the role that we play in determining our future. So one of the one of the articles, it's really a transcript that I read a couple of times a year, 2 or 3 times a year, because it does remind me that I am responsible for the direction that my life takes. I'm not responsible for every single thing that happens to me or around me, but I'm responsible for how I engage with it, and I get to determine what circumstances shape me or define my life. And so today the focus is going to be on an article, a transcription of a radio show. I'm sorry, I'm just realizing I did not type this in the chat already. A transcription from a show that Ernest Holmes did in the early 50s. And the theme was Your Invisible Guest. Your Invisible Guest. And the bottom line for the title is that Ernest Holmes focuses on the fact that we each have an invisible guest, I might say an invisible partner, that is at the core of our very being, our soul, our very nature, that is able to partner with us, but it's up to us to connect in with that presence, with that knowledge, with that wisdom, in order to direct the path that we take. So one kind of side note, just in case you are not a regular viewer on the Saturday morning Science, Mind, and Spirit conversations, during the first 8 months of the year, we actually go through the Science of Mind book, chapter by chapter, and do highlights and share comments and discuss what makes sense and what doesn't. And that takes 7.5 to 8 months to do. And then in the last 4 months of the year, we go to the Science of Mind Library and Archives and we extract articles or recordings about core principles of the science of mind, and we talk about them. So for the last 4 months, that's what we've been doing, and we will continue to do that right now, today. And then next week, we will begin to set the framework and begin again at the start, at the introduction to the Science of Mind textbook. So please hang out with us all year long. But this is why we're talking about this particular transcription, Your Invisible Guest by Ernest Holmes today. Okay, so Your Invisible Guest. How does Ernest Holmes begin this? Friends, if God is all there is, then it follows that spirit within us must be some part of the divine being. Okay, that is just an automatic place to begin. A place to begin. Wait a minute. Do you really believe that God is all there is? Right? Do you? Do you really believe that God is all there is? Because if you do, then that means that God is expressing in, as, and through you, just like God is expressing in, as, and through the oak tree, or in, as, and through the sun, in, as, and through everything that it creates. So that's a basic premise, that we believe that God is all there is. So that means that God is some part of each one of us. The divine being is some part of each one of us. When we were born into this world, we were accompanied by a spiritual presence, which is the real self. But this spiritual self is pretty much an unknown guest to, Ernest Holmes writes, or spoke, all of us. I would say an unknown guest to many people around the globe. And for those of us who are studying science of mind, it is, the more we study, the less it is an unknown guest. But even though we know that spirit is some part of who we are, okay, I'll just speak for myself. Even though I know spirit is some part of who I am, there are days and times and moments and conversations and experiences where I act like I have forgotten it. Well, I have forgotten it, which makes me behave in ways that are 100% human. And it's just interesting how that doesn't always work out so well. And then when I remember that I have this invisible guest that I think of as a partner, an invisible partner that is working with me, that is committed to my good, that already knows the answers of what to do, when to do, how to do it, and why. And I could partner with that part of me to have a different outcome, to have a better outcome, to move through whatever I'm moving through faster. And this show that he did, and this transcription of the recording that we have available to us, is just such a great reminder. Now, the second paragraph starts out with, now nothing is more important than that we should know ourselves. Remember, I said today was day 2 of Kwanzaa, and the principle that is focused on day 2 of Kwanzaa is Kujichagulia. And Kujichagulia means self-determination. So, right, nothing is more important than that we should know ourselves. In search of this self-discovery, we naturally start with the physical body. And of course, we believe in giving the body every chance we can to be well and healthy. We believe in proper diet and sane eating. We realize that we all need rest and relaxation. And certainly, we accept the findings of modern medicine and surgery. And this paragraph, like after the first sentence of this paragraph, it makes me smile because sure, we start with the physical body and we believe in giving the body every chance to be well and healthy. What did you have for breakfast today? Was it healthy? Was it supporting wellness and physical wholeness? I don't know. I'm just curious because I don't know. Actually, I had a good breakfast this morning, but I did not have such a good dinner last night. So I know that my physical body requires me to take care of it. I know that I am the one responsible for making healthy food choices, healthy choices about exercise and fitness, healthy choices like, do I really want to follow my doctor's orders and take that prescription or not, right? So it makes me laugh, this paragraph, because Ernest Holmes is like, we naturally start with the physical body. And I admit, I don't always start with the physical body in remembering and knowing myself and remembering and knowing my wholeness. So, but it's a good place for us to begin and to be thinking about this invisible guest that is within me and knows more. So, Ernest Holmes, and remember, this was written in the early 1950s. And so he shares that nowadays, which is the early 50s, there was already that point of being not clear about where the body leaves off and the mind ends, and the beginning of the mind body, of being conscious and aware of the mind body connection. That in the early 50s, there was already this awareness happening and this focus on, hey, wait a minute, we can't just take care of our body. There is some mental impetus that is also there. And of course, we would add, and Ernest Holmes goes on to add, that there's a spiritual, like there's mind, body, and soul, mind and body connection, and a cellular, right? Deeper than the cellular level, there is also a connection. And so in talking about this invisible guest, that's one reason why it is invisible. So Ernest Holmes writes in the first highlighted paragraph, there is still another field that remains pretty much unknown, and that is the relationship of the spirit within us to both the mind and the body. We have bodies and we have minds. We are also spirits. And there is a spirit within us that uses, right? It is expressing through mind and body. And so it's interesting imagery that he begins to dive into with this imagery of the guardian angel. And I don't know, I don't think we use angels very much in Science of Mind. And when we do, it is kind of in this context that everyone, in a sense, has a guardian angel, the angel of one's better self, or the angel that is the presence of God within. That energetic, that intelligence, capital I intelligence, that capital C consciousness, that is sometimes what I refer to as the spiritual DNA. Like I have the biological DNA of my physical parents, birth parents, and I have the spiritual DNA of the spiritual source of my life. And so, whether I think of that as a being or not, or in this case, whether I think about it as a guardian angel, I may picture that in my mind as one of many angel images that I've seen in my lifetime, or I may picture it in a way of it being invisible and it is simply a consciousness within me that is my highest self, that is my highest knowing. And the second part that's highlighted, and our whole endeavor, whether or not we know it, is to reach this inner invisible self and bring it into mind. And to become better acquainted with this inner spirit should be one of the chief aims of life, because it is this spirit within each one of us that is the only direct avenue we have to God. It is the only direct element that we have that is our connection with God. Okay, take a breath, because it goes back, if we go back to the very first premise that God is all there is, then God is a part of each one of us. And then we come to this sentence that understanding and knowing this inner spirit within us is the only direct avenue we have to God. So, how do you connect with that? How do you connect to that? Is this what is happening when we are in meditation? That we are using this quiet and reflective spiritual practice to move everything that is human out of the way and to focus on connecting in with this inner nature that is already within us, and to use that as guidance in our lives, as refuge in our lives, as direction for our lives. And there are other ways too. Often when people say, oh, I just love to take a walk, or I make sure I go hiking out in nature, because it reminds me that I am a part of the nature of life itself, just like a bird or the stream in the forest, or the ducks in the geese in the pond, that I am a part of the natural flow of life. And so when Ernest Holmes was speaking about your invisible guest, what I do love about that concept is that the guest, if I treated spirit as a favored guest, I would stop every day and check in multiple times a day. Like, oh, how are you doing? Like, what message do you have for me? What can we be doing together? Right? If I think about how I treat a valued or loved guest in my home, what if I think about spirit as my most valued and valuable gift or guest within this body, within this beingness, within the home that is my life? I don't know. Maybe it's just silly. Maybe none of that makes sense to anybody but me. But that I love the concept that if spirit is an invisible guest within you, then how are you treating it? How are you recognizing it? Because if you can't recognize it, you cannot get to the truest part of who you are. Ernest Holmes goes on to describe more about this invisible guest in this way. There is an intuition or an inner guide at the center of every person's being, which, if we let it can and will so direct our thoughts and acts that our thoughts and our acts will come into harmony with life. Moreover, skipping down to the next paragraph, moreover, I believe that this divine presence within you and within me is a little different in each one of us. Life never reproduces itself. Now, if you've been around me for a while, you know that I love this and where he's beginning to go in this part of his talk, because at this moment he begins to explain that oneness does not mean sameness, that if life does not reproduce itself exactly ever, and so while we have similarities, we also, every single person has differences, and every group of people, whether we define that group by country borders, national borders, or by ethnicity, or by age group, sexual orientation, gender identity, language spoken, places lived, no matter how we describe a group as a whole, every individual in that group will also be a unique individual. And so he uses this to reinforce how important it is for us to each know our own individual guests, because that is the only way we can know who we truly are. And how can you show up in the world without being your unique individual self? Well, there are lots of ways you can, but don't you want to be that 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 magic that only you can be? I mean, we know, right? Even right here today with this group, right? Wayne is different from Robert, and Robert is different from Tracy, and Tracy is different from Shay, and Carissa is different from Shay, and Shay is different from Linda, right? Each one of us is a unique expression of the one that has created all of life. So going down a little bit further on the page, Ernest Holmes begins to really explain more. It has been completely demonstrated that when we block these opportunities or these avenues of self-expression, then we become emotionally congested. So you know how bad it is when you get a cold and your chest or your throat or your nose is all congested. You cannot breathe fully. So Ernest Holmes suggests that when we don't fully know who we are, we are emotionally congested and possibly spiritually congested. And one of the interesting things about this is that when we do become emotionally congested, then our intellects also become confused. If we spend as much time becoming acquainted with our invisible guest, this spirit within us, as we do denying its presence, we should discover a wholeness at the center of our very being, a peace and a quiet contentment. And if we were operating from that point, it would do away with all our confusions. Next paragraph. But if each one of us is an individual in God and a person in his or her own right by divine decree, then it is not going to be any use to pattern our lives after others. Ooh, wow. Whew, when I was reading this paragraph a couple of hours ago, I got distracted because I wanted to really think about it and how that expresses in the bigger world, in the collective experience, that because we each individually are not going within and finding and in living in partnership with this individuation, then we begin to pattern our lives after others or do things that others dictate. And when Ernest Holmes then wrote in the next sentence, probably this is the real spiritual secret of democracy, that countless numbers of persons should learn how to live together while at the same time remaining themselves. And it's like, oh, not just in the US, but definitely in the US and in other places around the world. Democracy is failing because the individuation, the respect for individuation in different types of people, right? If that's disrespected or not valued, and what is valued or rewarded is that, oh, one person or one small group of people decides and then dictates what is good, what is right, what is better. And it doesn't have or reflect or value the variety that exists within the humanity that's affected. It's like, oh, that is the difference between democracy and other types of government or leadership. But nature is not confused, Holmes says. And if there is confusion in our lives, it is because we are not adhering to the laws of nature, right? Like, oh my goodness, the laws of nature. Nature is not confused. And if we are confused, if we have confusion in our lives, we are the ones who are not in alignment with the laws of physical nature or the laws of spiritual nature, either or both. Now, this is a very simple lesson, and it's a basic foundational lesson within science of mind, that we are not making or forcing anything to happen. What we are doing is we are aligning with what is physical law, what is spiritual law, and then making choices that allow those laws to work for us and with us, instead of fighting against them or thinking we can control and change what is spiritual law or what is physical law, right? We know that gravity is a physical law, and we understand it enough to know that I cannot just ignore gravity. Now, in our science, in our aviation science, we have learned to build machines that work with gravity in a way that allows us to fly, allows us to do certain things, but we are not changing gravity. We are learning to work with it to then experience flight. So think about that with spiritual law. I'm not able to change spiritual law. That my invisible guest is with me all the time, just waiting to partner with me or to provide guidance for me that will help me achieve the goals I have set. That is just law. It's spiritual law. I can ignore it and it's still working on with me on whatever I've decided is important, which may not get me the results that I want. It is still always working, but if I don't understand it, then I don't use it. But when I understand that this invisible guest is my partner in expressing the best of who I am, then yeah, I'm tapping in every day. I'm doing my meditation. I'm journaling and reflecting and opening myself to spirit's highest vision for my life in the visioning process. I am sitting quietly in contemplation and listening, not just with my ears, but with all of my senses for a nudge, for a whisper that will help me integrate the wisdom of my invisible guest, as Ernest Holmes is referring to it in this particular talk. Wow. And then together, my soul expands and expresses through me and as me. And not only am I happier and more fulfilled, but anybody who has to engage with me is probably happy that I am partnering with spirit and not just being led by my human ideas and feelings. So Ernest Holmes does go on to remind us that this invisible guest that we are hosting, that truly is the core of our individual and collective lives, that it's for us. And so this highlighted part, follow such genius or ability as you have to the full. Don't be afraid of it. Ooh, don't be afraid of it. So long as what you want to do does not interfere with anyone else, it's right. So long as it is constructive, it is good. So long as it abides in love, it can do no harm. Continuing, I wonder how many of us take the time to become acquainted with this better self, this higher self. Skipping a couple of sentences, you really do have a silent partner. There really is an unknown guest, an invisible presence, a divine intelligence which knows how to do anything. There really is a guide that can take you by the hand and lead you down the pathway of the good road of life, which leads to success and happiness. Take a breath. Take a breath. I know for me, even though I know this, like I've read it before, I've read it in, I've read it described in so many different ways. I've watched videos, I've listened to Sunday talks for years. So this is not new information for me. It's not. And it's probably not new information for you either. But why do we do this every Saturday? We do it because every single one of us needs reminders. Every single one of us needs the opportunity to recommit to partnering with spirit. So once again, Ernest Holmes described or titled this talk, Your Invisible Guest. And even though I'm saying that out loud, in my head, it's my brain is translating it to my invisible partner. My invisible partner who is so fully invested in my good that it is operating 24/7, 365 on my behalf and in me, as me, and through me, so that I can experience the best humanity experience that is available to me. And when I think about it that way, I want to know this invisible guest. I don't want it to be an invisible guest. I want it to be a guest that is fully present. I want it to be so much of a guest that is so fully present that I can only think of it as my partner in life, my partner in expression, my partner in expansion, my partner in evolution. And when I think of it that way, then I am very clear that I am determining my overall path. I'm determining where I go, and I am determining how I respond to whatever is going on around me and in the world. And I am determining by the way I live my life what my legacy will be and what is it that I am now passing on to others and to the world, whether it is while I am in this physical human body or beyond. So are we full circle right back to today is day 2 of Kwanzaa, and the principle of Kwanzaa, the Nguzo Saba of the 7 principles. Today's principle is Kujichagulia. Kujichagulia is all about self-determination, not power over others, not forcing others to do or be anything, but to take full responsibility for the overall direction of your own life and your contribution to the overall direction of the collective that you find yourself a part of. So during Kwanzaa, when the focus is on African American culture and African principles brought into the contemporary world, then when I am thinking about Kujichagulia, I am thinking about my own self-determination. Why do I host a show on the New Thought Media Network? What is the message I have in my ministry in the world? But I'm also thinking about how what I do contributes to the self-determination of Black people in the US and around the globe. So my actions are not just my actions for me, they are also a contribution to the collective. And then beyond that, if we think of concentric circles, right, I think about self determination as it relates to Tracy Brown. And then I think about how what I do contributes to self determination for African American people. And then I think about how what I do and what African American people do that contributes to Black people globally, all over the globe. And I think in the next concentric circle, how what I do and what the collective contribution is for people who are of African descent to our peers of all humanity from every other racial and ethnic group, because we are part of an entire world. And then when I think about that, if I think about it on a national level, then, right, I think then about the next circle, which is maybe all of North America or all of the Western Hemisphere, and then beyond that, the entire globe. So when we talk about self determination, and when we think about it in the context of Ernest Holmes reminding us that we have an invisible guest who is at the core of our very being and wants nothing more than to be with us as we navigate our life experience, then it is an amazing opportunity to remember, maybe to recognize for the very first time for some, but for others of us to remember that this is a relationship that I want to tend to. This is a relationship that it is important for me to nurture. It is a relationship that is always present, but how much I get from it is directly related to how much I put into it or how much I am open to it. Just like any physical relationship that I have with another human being, except that this relationship is with an energy and an entity that is invisible to the human eye, but tangible to the human experience. Invisible to the human eye, but tangible in my human experience. One more time. This invisible guest may be invisible to my human eyesight, but it is tangible in my human experience. How I recognize and nurture this invisible guest has a direct impact on how I view and experience my human life. So Ernest Holmes goes on for another couple of pages, but I'm not sure I need to even go into any of that. I do want to encourage you to go to the Science of Mind archives and download your invisible guest. If you are not a member of the archives, it's pretty affordable. It's less than $2 to download the transcript. If you are a member, then you know that you have 20 free downloads a month, or 20 downloads a month are included in your membership. And this is one that I do read more than once a year. I was thinking about 30 minutes ago, something I said felt really familiar, And I was like, ooh, did I pick this article, this transcription before? Because we've been doing this show for what, 4 years, 5 years? I don't know. And it's very likely that I have shared about it before because it is one of the ones that I go to multiple times a year to remind myself. So let's begin to move toward closing out. Over the next page and a half, Ernest Holmes does give examples of what he would say to someone who is questioning whether or not there really is an invisible guide or invisible guest or invisible partner. And those are some just good examples that are helpful. But I want to highlight two or three things that he says in the last page and a half before we close out for today. So after he gives those examples, he says, I have seen too many people reborn, remade, and renewed in mind and body just through taking a little time to get acquainted with the better self, just through coming to recognize the invisible and almost unknown guest who accompanies everyone through life. Yes, I really do believe in the spiritual presence within. And again, he uses the imagery of an angel. And, that imagery of an angel is accessible to most of us. We just have to be careful that we separate any images or understandings of angels that may give us a sense of separation from this invisible guest, because we have direct connection with it. It is not through an angel, it is communicating with us directly. Ernest Holmes then begins to wind down his talk by saying this: I am always reminded of that quiet inner assurance that needs no person outside of themselves to assure them. That divine presence which is positive and calm and sure. And so we should take time every day to form new habits of thought. We should take time through meditation to affirm the presence of the divinity within us. This is something no one can do for us but ourselves. Yes, there is a divine presence at the center of your very being. There is a spirit in humanity, and to each one of us it comes fresh and new and wonderful every day, and more wonderful as the days pass. That thing which you really are, that which you really are, that is the gift of heaven. That is the decree of God. And that might be a great foundation for an affirmation that is really powerful. I am a gift of heaven. I am the decree of God, not a degree of God, but I have been decreed as God's expression on earth. So I am a gift of heaven. I am the decree of God. 3 times. I am a gift of heaven. I am the decree of God. I am the gift of heaven. I am the decree of God. I am the gift of heaven. I am the decree of God. This is who I am. This is who you are. The gift of heaven, the decree of God, Remember that as you go through your day today and every day beyond. Remember that today, on the second day of Kwanzaa, the theme is self-determination. And if you can remember, I am the gift of heaven. I am the decree of God. And that is what I am partnering with to determine who I am in the world and how I go through life. You can only experience good, because we say it all the time. The only word in the vocabulary of spirit is yes. Let spirit say yes to you. Let spirit say yes to the best of itself being expressed in our world today. I'm so glad to have hung out with you this morning. My name is Tracy Brown, and we're closing out 2025 with this focus on your invisible guest or partner. Let's take that into the new year. I'll see you, or one of the members of our team will see you next Saturday right here on the New Thought Media Network and the Science of Mind and Spirit Saturday morning conversations. Bye for now.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.